Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world. It is your boy CIZY back at it again with another episode of the Voices of Value podcast. I tell you guys every time for about 7 years straight. I know I'm not always consistent with weekly episodes, but when I do bring a guest on, it's always a valued guest that I'm really excited to bring on and that I think can bring some value to you guys. And more importantly, and selfishly, I get to have a conversation with somebody, I typically look up to in some way or fashion. So thank you guys for tuning in for the podcast today. And if you're unfamiliar with our guest, I'll let him introduce himself shortly. But before I do that, make sure you hop on YouTube, go to Voices of Value podcast and subscribe, Instagram, VOV Media or Voices of Value podcast and follow. And if you enjoy this conversation today, make sure you share with a friend. That being said, Nick Ridpath, go ahead and introduce yourself to the Voices of Value audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Especially during the Chiefs game. I know that's a contentious time, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. I didn't even know that the game was at 10 a.m. this morning. It was like 9:42. And I'm like, yo, what time is the game today? And I look at it, it's like 10 a.m. I was like, oh shit. But hey, hopefully we win. Hopefully we're up like by 14 or 21 by the time we hop off the pod.
I think it's already 14-0.
That'll work. That'll work. But yeah, man, let them know where you're from, what your name is, what do you do? Just give us a quick little background and then we'll jump into your story.
Yeah, I'm Nick Ridpath. I live in the DC area. I work at a DMV gym for the most part, do some online training. I work for an online education platform called Prescript. So we do different courses that are basically just helping educate trainers on how to be better coaches. Pretty cool community there. And then yeah, I work with a little bit everybody from your average Joe, people that are in post rehab, athletes, professional athletes, even some bodybuilders, you name it. I kind of just said yes to everything along the way in my career and tried to figure it out. And I'm the opposite of, I guess like business coaches would be like, oh, find a niche. Yeah, I just did the opposite of that, which wasn't always smooth the whole time. But I think my skill set became pretty broad because of that.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love that. I feel like that'll be something we jump into today because I have like constant beef with self around, should I really just like focus on studying all about the shoulder so I can be the personal trainer who knows all about the shoulder or whatever it might be, or like should I change my name to performance optimizer instead of a personal trainer? It's an interesting world that we operate in as coaches, and I'm looking forward to getting into that. But I think it's really important to start at the very very foundation. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what part of the country you're from, what were some of your early interests? I know I typically hit people with like four or five questions in one, but yeah, man, where are you from? What city did you grow up in?
Yeah, my story is like the very like stereotypical fitness arc. But I grew up in Virginia, Southwest, down near the college, Virginia Tech. So kind of like a rural area, small town. I was always pretty good at sports. I mean, I'm a bigger dude. I would think by the time I was 14 or 15, I was 6'3". I was like 240 pounds. So I was
Damn.
always a pretty decent athlete. At one point, I guess early on in high school, like my freshman year, I was really heavy. Like I became less athletic because I got too fat. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I want to play in college. I want to be a good athlete. So my interest really shifted from like sports to like how do I make myself better for sports. So I started digging into like reading bodybuilding.com, even like teenage and stuff, like maybe not always the most helpful stuff. But I started getting into fitness and like my own training and like figuring out how I can actually become a better athlete and transform my body kind of around that time. And that kind of just grew throughout high school. That I ended up playing football in college, just lucky enough to go play football at the College of William and Mary, just like a small school on the East Coast. I call it like store brand Division 1, where we were FCS. So not playing with the big boys more than once a year, but still Division 1 football. And then there, yeah, I thought I was gonna do like the whole business major thing, and then like my love for like the training side never really went away. So I took a bunch of electives for kinesiology, and then the day that my I had to declare my major, I was like, fuck it, I'm switching my major to kinesiology. And that's what I did. And I was gonna figure it out along the way. And thought I was gonna go to PT school. Decided to go to PT school, to become a trainer, and became a trainer straight out of college, and just kind of started saying yes to everything. So I actually graduated right during COVID. So like my first job in a gym, I was supposed to start the week that I was supposed to start, the gym shut down. So like, hey man, we can't have you, gym's shutting down. So I ended up moving home, started training kids out of my dad's garage. And then the high school was allowed to start training again. So I took over the college, or sorry, the high school football team's training. I was like running the team in the weight room. kind of started my own business in the garage, and then I started my online business as well to kind of help, especially a bunch of my friends that just graduated that wanted to have like, training programs given to them with minimal equipment. Kind of went from there. I took the level one for Prescript, kind of got involved in the community, met a bunch of coaches that really taught me a lot. Really started expanding that, and then started posting social media. I ended up finding a guy who was 20 minutes away from me. He was running a sports performance gym who needed someone to come run it for him. Basically, he was doing like the day-to-day operations. Needed someone to get like boots on the ground. They had 80 some athletes, and then coincidentally, they were owned by the physical therapist who I did all my internships with
Mm.
when I was home from school. So yeah, they hired me. I got a really cool opportunity to work with athletes from age, I think the youngest were like 8. We had like 8, 9, 10-year-olds that were training all the way up to, we had guys that were playing in the CFL. We had a pro golfer. We had some like semi-pro baseball guys, lots of D1 athletes. So I got a pretty wide variety of athletes to work with there. And then also because it was attached to the PT clinic, I got a bunch of people that would finish up physical therapy. They finished up with a hip replacement, or their back hurt, or they had carpal tunnel, whatever, and they wanted to keep training once they finished their physical therapy. So I got started to kind of get into doing one-on-one training with them. So I got a pretty broad base of training with athletes across different sports, and then also getting a lot of people that were kind of in the post rehab setting. So after I was only there for about a year, if I moved up to DC, got my foot in the door at DMB Iron, and then started over from scratch, basically just started my own business in there, and really kind of circled back to doing only gym pop because I was just saying yes to whoever paid the bills. I
Yeah.
moved there with nothing but small online business to help support myself, and then grew a pretty decent gym pop business, and then I started to circle back into getting more athletes once I could afford to do that. So it's kind of where I'm at now. I'd say I'm probably like 30 to 40% athletes, the rest gym pop. And then, online business is also a big part of what I do.
Love it. Yeah, and I think I think there's so much to jump in there. I'm gonna dial it all the way back to high school though. Radford High School, right? Radford. Is that how you say it?
Radford, yeah. Uh-huh.
Radford High School. So when you're like a junior, sophomore, you kind of mentioned that you were and always a big guy, but kind of got a little bit bigger, and you're like, all right, I think I need to dial some shit back in. So I think you were saying that was during your high school time. What do you remember? I always like to ask this question. You mentioned a little bit about T Nation, but like in bodybuilding.com, but what do you remember being some of like your early who were the influencers at that time that caught your eye and you were like studying and like looking into this trainer? So like for me, it was Ben Bruno. I was seeing a lot of his content on T Nation, some of his articles. Who else? Freaking just like random influencers on YouTube where I used to watch their videos, like Christian Guzman or Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, I forgot his name. Steve something, some big bodybuilder.
Steve Cook.
Yeah, Steve Cook. So like when you
Yeah.
think back to your days, because from what I'm understanding, you're about the same age as me. So when you're thinking about to back to your high school days, who were some of those early people where you're like, man, like this YouTube video made me want to train, or I follow this guy on Instagram and he showed me this new exercise, or he made me think about how to train a little bit differently. But the early days, not like you in college your senior year, but like early days, who are some people that stand out to you? I just think that'll be a fun place to start.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say Steve Cook was probably one of the main ones. He was really big on bodybuilding.com at the time. I think he was like one of the first people they actually sponsored. So he had a ton of articles on there, ton of programs. They had like the Big Man on Campus program.
Yep,
I
yep.
remember doing that when I was like maybe 14 years old doing that. Remember too, they had a bunch of NFL guys too. They had like LaRon Landry's arm program,
Mm-hmm.
Steve Weatherford, the punter from the Giants. They had a bunch of guys like that too. So and honestly, probably many more just names I didn't even recognize, older school bodybuilders. I just read everything I could, look at all the programs, see what the differences were, try to learn, why those programs might work, or why they may not work in a lot of cases. But yeah, that's kind of like
I,
that was like my first touch point was with that. And then I think even some of the guys like like Lane Norton, who's
oh
very
yeah.
well established now, he was doing stuff on there in the early days. So
What do you remember about like your first day or first few months in the gym? Like when you were going to the gym, were you at like your local YMCA? Were you at like were you just using the high school gym? Were you was like an uncle taking you to his like garage gym? What were your early gym days like when you're thinking about to your first few workouts? Where were you training at? And what were like would you just go in there and spam chest press? I think it's fun to touch on this, but I'm always just thinking about the early days of like, man, what got me into training? Like, what was it? And I just remember like skipping school, going to the YMCA across the street, spamming the chest press machine for like 10 sets of 15, thinking that was like the only way, which low key when you're 14, that shit works. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I went through like layers of this. So, obviously, like playing football, we were like expected to be in the weight room in the high school for the off season. So um, probably going into seventh grade, the weight room became available. We'd have like 3, 4 days a week in there. So I'd go in there, whatever we had. I think it was 3 or 4 days, and we just do everything. I'm not sure how coherent the program was, but it'd be like 12 exercises, and we just go in for like an hour and a half, and you just do like you wouldn't spam chest press, you would spam everything, bench press, cleans, deadlifts, RDLs, bent over rows, pull ups, dips, you name it. You just literally anything you could do, we would do that. So that was kind of my intro. And then like throughout middle school, like I felt pretty good. I was a good athlete. I was playing ball pretty well. I think from like some point during like eighth grade, I remember just like gained a bunch of weight. That's like bad weight, right? So going into my ninth grade year, I was playing JV, but I dressed for the varsity, right? I felt cool like dressing out for varsity, but I never got any playing time. I was like, okay, like at the end of my freshman year, I remember like regrouping. Okay, like I need to change something if I want to actually be good, right? Because obviously I'm not good enough to play right now. I'm big enough to play. I'm not athletic enough. Like, what should I do? So, um, started training with one of my coaches. He was like a NFL vet. He played for like 12, 13 years. Won a Super Bowl with the Saints. He was a defensive back. And I remember getting in with him and doing some privates with him, and he would just absolutely crush my soul. This was during basketball season too. So I finished my freshman year of football, got into JV basketball, and I would be like training with him for an hour and a half before practice. And I remember the very first day we started, like very vividly. We were doing like supersets of like 4x12 back squat with like 4x20 like wall ball squats, and that was just like the start. And then we did like what else we do like Bosu ball lunges with like hurdle hops, and it was just like 5 or 6 circuits of super high volume. And then like I couldn't walk during basketball practice. And I remember my JV coach making us all run because I practiced so poorly, like singling me out.
That
But
is
after
hilarious.
that, I could not walk for a week. So obviously that got better. I kept working with him. I ended up going from like I think I was up to like 245 my freshman year during football season, and by the end of basketball season, I was like 195. So I lost
Wow.
like 50 pounds. And then from the end of basketball season to the start of my sophomore year of football, I got back up to like 225, 220. But it was like mainly muscle, especially when you're what would that be, 15 years old. You
Hmm.
know, like if you're training hard and eating good, you're gonna put on muscle. That's like the
Oh
best
yeah.
time in your life, you know. So I did that for what 2 or 3 summers. By the time I went off to play football in college, I was 245, you know, decent body composition. I was the same that I started at, but I was a different build. So yeah, a lot of it, my training in high school was kind of around the football team, around my coach that was working with me.
I love it. And when you think back to like the people who helped you most get to, at the end of the day, playing college football at any level is impressive. Being able to get on any Division 1 team in the country is impressive and requires some level of skill. Coaches must see something from you. It requires some type of hard work in case you just got come from a pure bloodline of like I'm a dog no matter what I do. But it requires some level of hard work. What coaches or teachers or you know, siblings or cousins really stood out to you during your like, 14 to 18 age range that like really inspired you or got you in the right headspace to like work hard enough and uh I guess just lock in to be able to get yourself to Division 1, football. I know I saw at doing a little bit of research. I think your head coach was Coach Saunders or something in high school, like. And when you think about your head coach then, or some of your other coaches, was there anybody who stood out to you or ever said something to you where you're like, "Fuck, all right, I'm locked in."
Yeah, I just remember having a conversation with my dad after my freshman year, and he's like, "Look, it's my dad's like 5'8". So I'm 6'3" on a bad day. My dad's 5'8". My mom's like 5'2". You know, I don't come from height. I have some distant relatives that are all like closer to my size, but whatever I ended up being was definitely some recessive genes. So like my dad was always a very good athlete, but he was small. So he's like, look, dude, like, you know, you have like the body basically I always wish that I had. He's like, I'm never going to force you to do anything, but like, I know you want to play in college. If you want to play in college, I'll support you along the way. You know, whatever you need, I'll connect you with the right people. And I was like, yeah, I do want to. So like, I felt like one, I knew I could do it. You know, I always prided myself in being like the hard worker. Um, I always like gave myself the impression that I wasn't the best athlete, but I could outwork everybody, even though I was a pretty good athlete. That didn't really change when I got to college. Then I actually was around better athletes. I'm like, okay, shit, now maybe I'm not the best athlete anymore. Um, but yeah, I just remember like he connected me with Coach Prelo, and then like I trained with him my whole high school career. And between him and Coach Saunders, like they told me I could do it. So they believed in me, I believed in myself, and I thought if I showed up every day and put in the work to do it, I would be there. And yeah, it ended up working out for me. So yeah, I mean, I was really supported. People that believed in me, I believed in myself, and I was just put in an environment where like I didn't feel like I couldn't succeed.
I love it. I love it. And then going to school, you end up majoring kinesiology. What do you feel like you really learned during your time in university? I think for me, I'm always, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but always interested in what people learn during their time at school. Cause I was like, I was a terrible student. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go become a strength coach. But then I was like, 4 years of bachelor's of science and I got to take this math course and this. And then I ain't gonna lie, I was just like, nah. So when I hear about somebody studying exercise science or kinesiology or anatomy or anything that translates to coaching after college, I always wonder what were like their biggest takeaways specifically from their coursework and from their professors. So is there anything that you feel like was super valuable during your time at university where you're like, man, coming out of college, I really felt like these one or two principles really helped me start from a solid foundation when I started coaching clients.
Yeah, there's a few things. I think you could argue, obviously, like the actual education itself did give me a leg up. I was able to study anatomy and physiology, biomechanics, all the stuff you need to be a decent coach. I would argue to many people, like if I was talking to my 18-year old self and I didn't have a scholarship or have funds to pay for college, do I need to get a loan to do that? Probably not. Like you can be a very good coach with just doing courses like we offer with Free Script Online, and also there's so much free education online. There's so many places you can learn if you just pair that with actually getting reps, getting skin in the game. I don't think you need to spend $100,000 or more on education necessarily. But with that said, like my education was like very good in my opinion. William and Mary's a great school. It's hard to get into. I was lucky I was able to get in, not because of my grades, but because I was playing a sport there. So I would argue that to some degree. I think to a greater degree, just like having to go through the grind of being a student athlete just teaches you like I think perseverance is the wrong word, but like you're gonna get up at 6, or so you're gonna get up at 5. You're gonna be somewhere at 6. You're gonna train for a few hours. You're gonna go to class all day long. You're gonna have to maybe have 45 minutes of free time before you're back at the facility. You're going through like 2 hours of meetings. You're practicing for 2 hours and some. You get time to eat. You go to study hall. Go to bed like 11 o'clock. You get up, do it again the next day, and you just do that for 4 years basically, some iteration of that. And it just teaches you to like how to eat shit, in my opinion, which I think is a valuable skill to have, and like not really like thinking about how bad it sucks, but you just like get used to doing it. You program yourself to do the things that you think are gonna make you successful, whether that's education, sports, business, life, whatever it is. I think that was a pretty valuable aspect. Like now, if I have a shit day on the calendar, or I have a week of just like working 12 hours or more every day, like I don't really think much about it. I'm like, oh man, this sucks. I'm like, yeah, it's just like what I've been doing since I was 18 to some degree, if not earlier. I think that's something that I think is valuable, especially from like the student athlete side of things, which I don't think would necessarily apply just to being a student alone. I think the other thing too is it just like buys you time to figure life out. Like at 18 years old, like it's probably a lot harder to be like, oh shit, now I have to like, go pay the bills, I have to figure out how to be an adult now. Like now I get 4 years to kind of delay, because like I know when I was 18, I didn't believe I could be a coach and like actually, afford to live a real life. I was like, oh, everyone tells me that, being a personal trainer, you're gonna make $10 an hour, and like you're gonna be like living in a shitty apartment, and like you're never gonna be able to make anything out of yourself, which is like so far from the truth. But it almost took me 3 years of school to figure out that, or convince myself that it's actually okay to be a coach, and I don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to get a business degree. I don't have to be a physical therapist even. Like I can just be a coach, personal trainer, whatever you want to call me. Like I can do that and honestly be more successful than a lot of people that are going to grad school.
But how do you feel like what let you know that not necessarily that it was okay, but that you could make a living, if that makes sense? Were you talking to other coaches as you were finishing up school, or during your, as soon as you said you finished right during the pandemic, were you just talking to other coaches in the game? They're telling you like, this is what I've done with my business, this is what I've been able to achieve. How did you develop the confidence to be like, look, I can, if I go into this field and I commit myself to becoming, one of the best and trying to do my very best to coach and get people results, I'll be able to, feed my family, live the type of lifestyle that I want. Because I still think that a lot of trainers are on two different sides of the coin, right? One side is like, I don't think that this is the route I can go to make a good enough money or to take care of the family or live the lifestyle that I want. Or on the other side of the coin, they're finishing up high school thinking, oh, all I got to do is take a 2 week online course, get my certification, start an online coaching business, run some Facebook ads, and I'm going to be a millionaire. So it's like two extremes. Where were you at in like 2020, 2019 from a like monetary perspective? How am I going to monetize the coaching area? Or were you like, I don't really give a fuck about money, I'm just trying to become the best?
Honestly, it wasn't until like my very last year of college that I really started to consider it because I was kind of all in on physical therapy. It's like, I'll go get my physical therapy degree. If I get out and get a decent job, I should be able to make 100K, whatever the class, 80 to like 120, yeah, out of school. I'm like, cool, I'll just go do that. Check the boxes there. And I like physical therapy stuff. So I'll get into that. And then, like the more and more, especially once I finished playing football my last year, I was like, man, I really want to just do training. Like, I don't think I was spending more time in clinic and I was like, this is kind of like boring. I don't want to wear a polo to work. I don't want to be working with people that are like so geriatric or so fucked up. I can't do like actual training. Like, I don't want to be doing a bunch of remedial stuff all day long. Um, and then like lucky enough, I went to a hard school, so my grades weren't that good. I had like a 3.2 GPA, and to get into PT school, you need much higher than that. So everywhere that I applied, I got denied first go around. So I was like, sick. This is kind of like giving me permission to just like go do personal training. At the time too, it was like I remember watching a lot of like like Jordan Syatt's Instagram and his YouTube, and who else would I listen to? Like Eugene Teo was getting really big. I was following guys like that kind of like rose up through social media very fast, and they were growing very large businesses, and like I respected them a lot. But there was several people adjacent to them that were doing the same thing, and I was like, everyone says the fitness market's saturated, but when you look around at who it is, it's like it's saturated with like a lot of people who, one, they don't really care, or they're really good marketers, but they aren't doing anything special from the actual product that they're providing. So it's like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. Maybe that's delusion. Maybe that's like false confidence, or some might call it cockiness. But that's kind of the approach I took. I was like, okay, like I think I'm like decently intelligent, at least compared to like the average fitness professional. I think I could figure this out and do it better, at least than whatever the average is. So like if you think that you're in a industry that's saturated, but it's saturated with people that you think are kind of below the curve of like what you think is actually a good product or a good service, I think you should be able to succeed if you try hard enough, and especially if you surround yourself with the right people. So that's kind of like, again, like getting into the business. I was like, okay, I'm just going to start saying yes to everything. And most importantly, I'm going to surround myself with like, okay, if I get a question from a client or get a new client with a certain problem, I'm going to make sure I at least know somebody who I can ask questions to that will help me with this. So like, I can say yes, knowing that if I don't know the exact answer, I know somebody in my circle who will help me with this because they know the right answer.
I love that. I love that. And do you feel like you had that community early on, like when you first got out of school, pandemic hits? Like, can you talk to dive in a little bit more about what it looked like on your side of the country at that time? Because me in Missouri, like I feel like they closed down March, April, maybe a little bit of May, but then things opened right back up. So yes, you're masked up, but I was back coaching clients in the gym, still 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. pretty much from then on. So I feel like it only really shut down for me as a personal trainer for like 3 months. And then we were back coaching, back live, back in person, just mass mandates. So what was it like for you? You get out of college, you enter your first, work situation where you had to be away from the gym for like 6 months, 12 months. Just talk about that 2020 time period.
No, we were actually pretty chill. I think for me, my initial entry to personal training was my last semester of college. That's when I got hired. And then
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had my interview, the guy hired me. And then we went on spring break. And while I was on spring break, we started getting emails from the school like, oh, like spring break's being extended for a week. Oh, now school's shutting down. And then we had like the whatever gym shutdowns are issued by the governor. Then the guy that hired me texted me and was like, hey man, I'm sorry, like we're closing down. You can't start here anymore. So gyms were closed until I graduated. I was taking classes online. I was still living in Williamsburg. So I didn't leave until like the very end of April, I think, or beginning of May. And like right when I got back home, that's when gyms started to open back up. So I was able to get back into the gym, at least train on my own. And that's when I started like, basically I just like I knew a handful of kids on the high school team. I had a couple of adults in the area who I knew were interested in personal training. I was like, hey, like I'm gonna set up a barbell. I'm gonna buy like an incline bench and a trap bar for my garage. I know like the gym can be a kind of an issue right now for a lot of people. If you come train on like one-on-one, I have an open schedule. That's kind of how I started doing that. And then that would have been what did I say, May? I want to say by like the end of the year is when I got hired to work as a performance coach over in Blacksburg. So I did that for about 6 months, and then I went over there for about a year. Um, yeah, so like by the time I was over there, gyms were pretty normal. We had to wear a mask for the first little bit, but we were basically running full business. I didn't have to deal with a whole lot of the COVID stuff because for the most part, during the issues that were coming from that, I was able to train in my garage.
Hell yeah. And when you think May 2020, um, what what was your foundation from like, all right, let's do it like this. So imagine it's 2020, it's May. Somebody's like, hey, Nick, I want to train with you. You're like, okay, cool. Like, what are you interested in? I'm like, I'm 45. I got some kids, I'm busy. I'm just trying to get back in shape. I feel a little overweight and, I don't, my lower back doesn't feel that great. I just feel like shit. I'm an adult that hasn't trained in a long time. I feel like shit. What was your foundation for somebody like that coming in? Your Gen Pop, typical adult, typical complaints, typical shape in terms of and goals in terms of trying to improve body composition and feel a little bit better. I'm just trying to get an idea of like how you were thinking back then so we can compare it to now in terms of like how you would onboard a client and typically what you're looking at. Like, okay, we're going to do these type of movements or we're going to do this assessment. So what was like your onboarding process and how you think about training somebody May 2020 and then do that same thing for today?
Yeah, dude, it's so hard for me to remember exactly because I know I remember. So I started that in May. I remember signing up for the level one in August of that year. So that would have
Damn.
been what 3 months later. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I remember taking the level one of like realizing how ignorant I was with a lot of my approaches, which and still even with that, I was doing basic stuff, like vertical push pull, horizontal push pull, hinge lunge, squat patterns, right? But like being able to actually um, assess those movements as well as actually being able to, progress and regress appropriately based off what the person needed. And that was like something that was a whole new world opened up to me by taking the level one through prescript. So to tell you exactly where my head was, gee, I'm trying to think. I remember I would be throwing a lot of like noodles at the wall to see what would stick in terms of changing
Mhm.
forms. I didn't really understand exactly what I needed to change. And then getting involved in that community is also too what I mentioned earlier is what opened me up to a lot of other coaches who are like, okay, like if I have a problem, I know we have a bunch of coaches that have different niches within that community who I can reach out to. And also like we all started following each other on social media. So instead of just consuming like the main, big people's content, I started consuming a lot of like, people like ourselves content,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
smaller accounts, not influencer shit, people that are actually out here doing the thing every day. So yeah, that's I don't think there was any like black and white change in what I did. I think everything I've done kind of throughout my career has just been an evolution of how I thought about things. Like I learn a little thing here and I apply it. I learn a little thing here and I kind of mold that to what I've already thought.
No, it totally makes sense. And, I was thinking in my head, I was like, wow, well, if you finish college and you like officially start like, coaching full time 2020, I'm sure you've done tons and tons of hard work. So hopefully this doesn't sound like it's reducing anything, but it just seems like from 2020 to now, like I'm over here looking at your content. I'm like, this guy seems like he's been training for fucking 35 years. Like the way you're able to communicate, just like general foundational information and knowledge that you're sharing online and that you're the way you think about coaching, the way you think about the body, the way you think about just tons of things. I'm like, this feels like me at 15 consuming content from somebody who, has been in the industry for 30 years already. So, but then I'm like, nah, me and Nick are the same age. Nick started going full time coaching 2020. So, like, do you also feel like you've been able to like rapidly take in a lot of information, iterate, practice, like try a whole bunch of new things and learned a lot in the past 5 years? Or do you feel like it's been like a slow process and not much information has changed between what you knew, then and now? But I just feel I feel like you've fat press the fast forward button, like your brain was just like boom, 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 concept, apply, 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 and you feel like a 20-year expert to me. So talk a little bit about like your education process, finding prescript that early on, what other books or coaches really, you know, helped you over the past 5 years, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to say that you feel
Yeah, no,
to
no, no.
me, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get this a lot. And two, honestly, like halftime, I've never opened up with like how long I've been coaching for. I
Yeah.
want my work to speak for itself because on occasion people are like, oh, you've only been coaching for what is it, like 6 years now. I'm like, yeah, but like the 6 years, it's I saw somebody online getting roasted. Well, one of these boomer fitness coaches, and they're like, you've been coaching 40 years, but you've been coaching 40 years like it was year one. So they've been
Mm,
repeating year one for 40 years, right? That was the insult I got, which I thought was a pretty good insult. But
it
like
is.
I've made an effort. I made an effort to, like I said, like all throughout college, all throughout high school, especially like when I was in college, it's when like the influencer education really started to happen. So guys like Eugene Teo and like Joe Bennett, there's like a lot in like Mind Pump even. I started consuming as much as I could. I signed up for like the Gombaru method, private library videos, and then watch him and John Meadows talk about training stuff. So literally sometimes I'd be in class, I'd be watching Gombaru method, like trying to figure out, trying to like learn training stuff instead of listening to whatever liberal arts bullshit I had to learn at William and Mary. But that was like really good foundation. So when I graduated school, I remember listening to Jordan on Mind Pump, and I was like, oh shit, like Jordan talks unlike anybody else, except maybe like Eugene a little bit. So like I'm gonna sign up for this level one. I'm gonna keep learning, and then like most importantly, I want to get in a position where I can just start to get reps, right? Because like I just want to be able to apply this. So that's kind of like I think I'm lucky in the sense that I got a lot of opportunities to get a lot of reps very early on. Between like we had 80 kids that were training at the performance gym that I was working in, and when I was working over there, I was still doing my own business too. So I wake up on a given day at 5 a.m. I train a kid at 5:30, train a kid at 6:30. I would drive to Blacksburg. I would work there. We train 50 to 60 kids every day. We had like a roster of 80. I would train like 3 or 4 one-to-one sessions with PT clients. I would drive back. I would see like another kid in my garage, or I would go to the high school and I'd run the high school weight room. And then I'd take a call with an online client. And then I'd take a call with my mentor. So I also signed up. I did mentorship with Killian for a while as
Mhm.
well. So like for an entire year, the first year of my career, because I wanted to have somebody in my corner who is where I want to be and have them help me kind of get there. Right. That's kind of the way that I thought about it. Okay, I'm going to surround myself with the right education, the right community, the opportunities to actually apply what I'm learning, and then somebody who can help guide me because they've been here before too. That's kind of like my thought process. So um, I did that basically until I moved. What is that? A 12-hour day, 13, 14-hour day. I was like, okay, got nothing else to do. I'm not making any money right now, but I'm getting a lot of reps and I'm building my skill set. At some point, like that's going to have return on investment. So once I moved up to DMB Iron, like I was lucky that there was no established personal training in the gym at the time. It was all independent contractors. So I was able to sit at the front desk and kind of just like, post online, tag the gym. And I was able to get a pretty busy book within my first like 6 months there. And then same thing, I was getting up at 4. I was training at the gym from 5 a.m. till 5 or 6 p.m. I was doing like 8, 9 clients every day. I was doing the online stuff. I was posting every day. That was another thing I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to post online every day. I'm going to attend all the pre-script labs every day. It's kind of like a roundtable discussion, a place to kind of connect with other coaches. I'm going to take the level 2. I'm going to take the level 3, right? I'm going to keep providing myself opportunity to learn and build my skill set. And I know the more that I learn, also the more reps that I get getting hands on, the faster I'm going to progress in my career, right? So that's kind of like the approach I've taken all the way up to you get to the point where like you've taken courses, you can take more courses, but like I just want to get more unique reps in. So again, like paying for level 3 where I can go spend a week. This is before I was on staff. You know, go spend a week with a bunch of guys that are training for the NFL Combine. It's a very unique opportunity. Now that I'm on staff, I get to go every year, so I get to have reps of that every year. Even saying yes, like I've trained kids for their pro day for free, just to get the reps in, right, in my career. Uh, I've taken flights out to see NFL guys who wanted to work with me without them even paying me yet, right? I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to invest in this opportunity because I know it's going to have a high ROI at some point, whether it's financially or whether it's just a skill set thing or whether it's adding something to the resume. I just try to say yes to any opportunities that I think are going to help expedite, you know, my skill set or my career.
I love that. I love that. And for the audience, I just want to summarize a few things. So, from a few things, fitness business perspective related, it sounds like essentially early on, when you're going in, when you're contemplating whether you want to become a coach or not, this is how you should think about it. Number one, there's a lot of competition out there, but is it really competition? Because are these people good? Are they great? Are they shitty? Like think about your industry and who's surrounding you, and like, do you have a chance? Like, do you believe in yourself? Do you think that you really invest in yourself and trying to get education? Do you really think you're a really good coach when it comes to communicating and connecting with clients and helping them get results? Because if you do, there's tons of coaches out there who are not. So it's not really competition if you think that you can be great and you think you have a great foundation, because there's millions of people out there who are just grabbing a certification and then just that's it. That's the last certification they get for the next 40 years. Going back to that, online little diss or whatever. So number one, have confidence that you're a good coach. Invest in yourself. Don't worry about the competition if you know that you're going to invest in yourself and that you're a good coach, and jump into it. Number two, as soon and as early as possible, get as many reps as possible. So jump into every opportunity, say yes to everything, offer to do things for free, offer to do things for a lower cost, whatever you can do to get reps in, get them in as early as possible, because that's going to help you learn faster and apply the concepts you're learning through online educational courses you've purchased or in school, things that you went through in school, or if you're just seeing stuff online from Nick or from Killian or from Jordan or from any of these people, and you're like, oh, that's a really cool concept. You can apply it the next day because you have 10 people you're coaching for free. So you get to practice all day. So I love that. And thank you for sharing that. What I want to do now is kind of talk a little bit about, how do you think about the difference between training pro athletes and gym pop? And the reason why this is on my mind, Ben Bruno posted a post a few days ago talking about like the difference between, he's like, hey, look, I've coached tons of athletes. I coached a ton of gym pop. And something I mean, I'm not going to go into the video. You guys can go watch that, but he was just talking about there's not a huge difference in terms of the framework, at least how he runs things. So being that you have experience in this area where some day, some parts of the day you're coaching gym pop, some parts of the day you're coaching athletes, um, for a new coach who's interested in coaching, both populations of people, how do you explain, or how would you say to think about the difference between coaching an athlete and a gym pop individual?
Yeah, I think having a really good base with Gen Pop clients will really have a good carry over to athletes, because it's going to help you learn the movement fundamentals and how to coach very basic patterns, right? Like if I can coach, Peggy the librarian how to do a hinge without her back hurting, inevitably I'm going to have some pro athlete who can run a 4.340, who has a shit ton of anterior tilt and everything they do. They have really bad backside mechanics and the back hurts all the time. It's like I have seen this 1,000 times. I haven't seen it in somebody who can run a 4.340, but I've seen it in Peggy the librarian et al. That I've trained throughout my career, trained Gen Pop clients, right? So a lot of the stuff you're going to see in regards to like troubleshooting back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, whatever it is, like the definition of performance and like even function for like a pro athlete versus a Gen Pop client can be very different. But like at the roots, these like basic fundamentals are going to be the same, and how you coach them and how you communicate with people, even, being able to communicate things well. Um, Athletes learn very fast. So you could probably give them bad cues. You could just show them you're doing it correctly and they'll fix it, right? They're very good at that. As opposed to, Gen Pop clients, they're very bad, usually very bad learners of movement, right? Their motor skills aren't as good. So I see it as like, if we can coach these people to move better, you can coach a high performing athlete to move a lot better, way faster, right? Because we've had the difficult clients now. Now we have somebody who can learn fast, who's easy to actually coach, and we can probably expedite our progress with them much faster. So I think from the nuts and bolts, just providing a service, communicating, coaching basic movements, like that's going to be built with a really good foundation of whoever you can get in front of you, but especially Gen Pop. I think where it's going to kind of, start to separate, it's going to be obviously like what athletes have to do on the field or on the court, whatever it is going to be much more demanding than Peggy the librarian who wants to like look good in their bathing suit in the off season, and they want to not have their back hurt when they reach out to get a book off the shelf. Right? There'll be different things, right? So understanding that like we may have to scale training or get them ready for the demands of whatever their sport is to a degree that's going to be fitting of what they're doing, as opposed to activities of daily living. That's where I might defer a little bit. I'm not trying to make a Gen Pop client run a fast 40 for the combine, or be durable enough to get blocked by a 330-pound offensive lineman. Those things are going to be a little bit different, right? But I would say there's more that is alike than is not alike.
No, I love that. I love that. And, say an athlete's coming into DMV Iron to work with you for the first time. When you're watching an athlete move for the first time, what are like the first one or two things your eyes go to that, you think most coaches either miss, or something you would have missed, a few years ago? So what are a few things, one or two things that you're looking for, or your eyes first catch when you're first watching an athlete move in their first session?
Yeah, I think for good athletes, we're going to see a lot of the same stuff. Like they're very fluid, right? They're very smooth most of the time. I think what I kind of look for the most is like, how do they move their hips? how do they organize their rib cage, right? Like, because a lot of our movements gonna you hear me talk about online, like, stacking the rib cage and pelvis a lot, like finding continuity between those two things, being able to create, good tension through the core essentially. Like that's something I look at a lot, because a lot of guys will have really poor control over their pelvis or really poor control over their rib cage. They're really good overcomers. So if we kind of look at things like, how we should function at the shoulder, how we should function at the hip, how we should function at the spine, like what our definition of doing those things well would be, they're not very good at, but they're very
Mm.
good at the end result, right? They're very good at the product, but how they do that is not going to be the best in terms of keeping them healthy for the most part. So we'll see oftentimes athletes have a lot of hamstring issues, like a lot of low back issues, a lot of shoulder issues, whatever it is. So from the standpoint of like, okay, this athlete's already very good, we just want to make them more durable, looking at how to give them the tools to move better. My goal isn't to change how they run, for example. My goal is just to give them the tools to where, like, if they want to express variability of movement, they have the ability to do that. So a lot of times they just don't have the awareness. No one's taught them how to move, right? How to get to certain joint angles, how to get into certain positions. That's like a lot of what we're trying to do.
And you kind of really answered it right there, but just to dive deeper and give you like another variation of the question, it's like, how do you avoid changing, like, you see an athlete move a certain way and then you're like so focused on like, hey, all right, well, we can improve this or make this a little bit more efficient by changing your positions. But isn't there a chance that changing their positions or whatever compensation pattern they're using that has been working over the years, like if you fix it or change it, it could make them perform worse? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
um
I
yeah.
think to the degree where you're making it too sport specific, I think so much what we do in the weight room is so general.
Hmm.
Like me teaching you how to do a dumbbell RDL or a Bulgarian split squat is not going to make you run a slower 40, like, right, getting
Yeah.
into a stack
Yeah.
position, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm out here on the field with an athlete, I'm making them do 30 10-yard starts and I'm overcoaching the shit out of their first two steps, like, is that going to maybe, hey, pelvis needs to be here, cage needs to be here. It's like, no, 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 like simple stuff here. Like, hey, drop your head. Hey, like, here's a
Yeah.
video. You say you don't have very good like low heel recovery. Here's what we're looking for with this, right? A lot of the times with things that are more, sport specific or even just like running specific, I'll just show them videos of themselves, right? Like, hey, here's what you're doing. Here's what we should be doing to fix it. Not overcomplicating like very, minute things in terms of like movement quality, but more so like little stuff. Because, like, again, like an athlete that's thinking too much is an athlete that's not going to perform well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That was a great answer. Um, Another thing that I've been thinking about lately, because I have one of the facilities I coach at has like a lot of, I don't know any other way to say it, but to use like the annoying phrase, like high performers. So long story short, people who work in industries or where they're just working long hours, they're trying to be like the best of the best. They're always hustling. They're like, they barely even make time for family. Motherfuckers are just hustlers, like intensity, 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 right? From a work perspective, not necessarily athletes, right? I guess you could call them corporate athletes. Um, how do you coach or talk to a client, whether athlete or gen pop, about working hard versus like training at the right intensity? Because a lot of these people who come in because they go so hard in their careers, when they come into the gym and I'm like, how'd you sleep last night? And they're like, I got 3 hours. I'm like, okay, how's your lower back feeling and how's your knees feeling? They're like, it feels like shit. And then I'm like, okay. And I see them moving, like I take them through a general movement warm up and they look like shit, like shittier than they normally look. I'm just gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna dial down the intensity, the volume, like I'm just gonna dial things down, knowing that in my head, like if I keep what I had planned, they might get injured or they may not perform that well. But then they're like, no, no, I can do whatever. Like let's just get after it. Let's still go hard. I don't want to be a pussy. How do you coach an athlete or gym pop individual through that? Does that make sense? Working hard versus training at the right intensity,
Yeah, yeah.
depending on where they're at.
I think part of it's education. So, especially being able to relate with them. If you're a dude that likes to hustle, like, I like to really describe the idea of like, could be training stimulus, could be like career trajectory, but there's like a qualitative side as well. Or even more simple than that, like I like to look at like the analogy of like physics. So in physics, there's like scalar and vector, right? I was terrible at physics, so I'm not that smart. Scalar is like just magnitude, right? So it could be like load. I ran 10 miles. I lifted 400 pounds for X amount of reps, whatever. And then a vector is going to be both magnitude and direction. It's like, where is the direction of that stimulus or that like the direction of our career, whatever it is, right? So understanding that working hard for the sake of working hard is not always going to be putting us in the right direction. So it could be, I don't know, like if I'm trying to be a CEO of a company, or even trying to be like a better like stand-up comedian. And it's like my bits all suck, but I think I need to get better at my crowd work. My crowd work's actually pretty good, but all I do is get better at my crowd work. It's like, no, 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 my actual bits are actually terrible. Like I need to get better here, right? So I could be working hard for one thing, but it's not actually getting me better at what I need to do to, be more successful in my career. Um, so understanding like, hey, you working harder, you lifting more, you doing more volume for the sake of doing it is not going to be necessarily what's going to make you better, right? Here's what's going to make you better. I know this because I've trained X, Y, or Z people for X amount of years, and this is what's gotten them results, right? So also showing them like proof of concept when you're educating them, I think that's very valuable. And then two is going to be like hiding vegetables in the spaghetti sauce. So like putting them in an environment where they have the illusion of doing more, but they're not actually doing more. So like for
Mm-hmm.
example, like a handful of NFL guys that I work with in the off season, they want to just like work all the time. They want to like get up, go to the field, and then they want to like go to the pool some 2 hours, and then lift, and then they like go back to the field, and then we're not going to do that. So like, how can I help organize them where they're still going to have the perception of working that hard, but maybe not working as hard as they would be on their own, right? So it's give them something to do. Like, hey, if you're going to go to the field twice, here's what you're going to do in session one. Here's how you're going to do session two, right? And then we understand how to manipulate variables to make it less fatiguing, right? Or make it more productive to what they're doing. So, hey, you can still go do that, but here's how we're going to do it instead of me leaving you your own devices, right? So giving them more structure and making sure we control more of the variables within that structure, I think is another very useful tool.
I love it. I love it. And within what you just said, you talked a little bit. You didn't use the words, but essentially talking about, developing or building buy-in from an athlete or from a client.
Yeah.
You mentioned like having proof of concept in the way that you educate them about, why or why not they will do this or why I'm not going to allow them to do this, whatever it might be, right? So over the past, few years, how have you, I guess if you dig your best to break it down into simple terms, how do you build buy-in with a human being? At the end of the day, I think it's going to be different between every athlete. It's going to be different between every non-athlete. I was about to say between athlete and gym pop, but at the end of the day, we all have different personality types. So just when you think about building buy-in, what are some, I guess, key points that stand out to you in terms of how you're going about doing that?
Yeah. Ask the right questions. Make sure you know exactly what they're looking for. Give them a response showing you that you know how to get there, right? Maybe add in some anecdotes within that. Hey, I worked with these people. We did this. It worked really well for them. Show an openness to adapt on the way. Like, hey, I know like if it doesn't work exactly like this for you, like we can do X, Y, or Z to fix that. Like I'm gonna be coaching you throughout. We're not just following a cookie cutter program, right? Um, and then yeah, I think just like understanding that like we're coaching, right? We're coaching human beings. We're not just like programming a computer. So like really listen to them, listen to what their needs are, reaffirm we're doing the right stuff. If they're kind of off thinking they're not doing the right thing, so X, Y, or Z reason, listen, hey, I understand. I understand why you feel that way, but here's why we're doing the right thing, right? Just trust me, right? So building buy-in in terms of like not just disregarding them when they have objections, but like listening to them, acknowledging them, and then give your response in terms of why you're doing the right things, and then provide results. Like, hey, like we're tracking these data points, or like we're getting stronger here, or like we're doing more workload here, or we're losing weight, right? Or like our measurements are getting smaller, whatever it is, our body fat's going down. We have some objective measurements we can point to along the way too. Like, hey, may not feel like this is making a lot of progress, but hey, in the last 6 weeks you've lost 10 pounds, right? Or in the last 6 weeks you've added 20 pounds to your bench press, whatever their objective goal is. We have that down as well. So, listen, coach, and then have results. Obviously, have results you can point to show that hey, we actually you are getting your money's worth here.
I love it. I love it. At the beginning of this conversation, I said, just think about it like a coffee shop conversation. We're just going to chat real quick and we'll keep it chill. And with coffee shop conversations, you can't sit at the coffee shop for too long because they get mad. You're taking up tables. They're like, all right, bro, you done finish your cappuccino. Get the fuck up out of here. So, the next person can come sit down. So with that being said, we only have a few minutes left. So I'm just going to ask you a few random questions.
All right.
What if there's like one or two books, and this does not have to be training related, by the way. If there's one or two books that you feel like were really impactful for you in your lifetime around any topic, it can be training, it can be psychology, it can be relationships, it can be whatever you want, pickup lines, I don't fucking know, but anything anything you want. What are two books that stand out to you that Nick really is like, man, that was a good ass book?
Um, okay, this is gonna be kind of out in left field. There's a series of books by the author Robert Caro. on the rise of Lyndon B. Johnson, former U.S.
Okay.
president.
Yeah.
So that's a crazy. The little beginning's a little bit dry with like the backdrop of like the history of Texas and whatnot. But if you want to watch like obviously it's very political. Like one of my clients who kind of works in DC and who's kind of connected in DC was like, if you want to understand Washington DC and politics, like read this series of books. So I think in terms of like if you're interested in that stuff's very interesting, but just like understanding human relationships, understanding, like politics, I think just politics within any sort of business or any sort of relationships, right? Anything that you're involved in that regard. But yeah, understanding like human interaction and relationships and just like the grind, like the dude was a fucking grinder, right? So that really opened up my eyes to like, hey, if you want to like fucking take over the world, like this, like follow these principles in a sense. That's an excellent series. Yeah, honestly, off the top of my head, I read like a lot of obscure stuff. Like I read a lot of like World War II history and like Civil War stuff. And right now I'm reading what's it called, The Rising Sun. It's about like it's essentially it's like pre World War II Japan and then like the war in the West and then like the post World War II, kind of fall out of that.
I
Um,
love it. I love it. I love
yeah.
it because, two things come to mind. Number one, yesterday I had a, FaceTime client and I'm talking to her and she's like, yeah, one of my friends, what she does is she like reviews books for a living, right? And
Hmm.
she asked me what I was reading, and when I told her, she was like, "You're like the standard 45 middle-aged man in America. Like you just read World War II, like presidential history, things of that nature." So I love that. I love that. Okay. If there's one documentary or one TV show on Netflix that stands out to you as like, wow, that's impactful, like what comes to your mind? Like when you're like, and again, this can be anything, it doesn't have to be related to training. Impactful documentary or TV show that you watched that just made you feel something.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I've been watching a lot of Bourdain's Parts Unknown.
Yes.
So I love the travel. I love food. So and honestly, like I was never when he was alive, I was never like a fan. Like I didn't really know about him. I didn't know what he did. So like, after the fact, like the last year, I've been digging in and watching all of his stuff. So it's interesting because again, food, travel, seeing somebody who's like creative and also open. Like I think having openness, especially in today's world, open to other cultures, open to, you know, foods, traveling, whatever it is, appreciating other human beings. I think it's an awesome quality to have. So I really, really do enjoy his stuff.
I love it. And final question. We're going into finishing up quarter four of 2025. We got October, November, December. What are a few things you're looking forward to? And then go ahead and wrap that with, where we can find you on social media, how we can support what you got going forward. And just share that information. We'll throw that in the bio as well. So one or few or two things you're looking forward to in quarter four. I know for me, I signed up for Prescript level 1 starting
Oh yeah.
here, I think the week of October 24th or 27th or something like that. So looking forward to getting started there. That's my most exciting thing for quarter four, wrapping up quarter four. What about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm doing a seminar down in Charlotte at No Limits Fitness here in 2 weeks or so, November 1st. I'm excited for that. I did one so 2 summers ago as well. So it's always fun going down there and getting to educate in person as well. I really enjoy doing that. Getting married in December. So that's that
A
that's the biggest one on the list. And then early January, level 3. So that's quarter one, but level 3 starting back up. So just getting to go down there and work with some guys that are ready to hustle and go get paid, be on TV. So that's always a lot of fun.
I love it. Congratulations on the marriage. Shout out to I'm brain farting on his name right now, but shout out to the owner of No Limits Fitness. I enjoy seeing his content. He's
Yeah,
a
well,
dog. Will. He's a dog, very motivational individual. So I enjoy his content. Shout out to Prescript. I'm looking forward to getting educated. Shout out to you for all the YouTube videos you've been publishing and Instagram videos you've been publishing. Before we sign off, what's your IG and what's your YouTube so people can find you and continue learning?
yeah, IG is at Nick Ridpath _. I believe YouTube is the exact same. My website's going to be www.unbranded-performance.com. Yeah, any of those places you can find me there pretty easy.
Love it. Nick Ridpath, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. This is Kyle Stetzer. Subscribe, share. If you enjoyed this conversation, drop a comment below. Peace.